Hi guys, so this is the 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock panel. We have Boldwood Publishing's Diane, Saxon and Mary Grant. So this is the murder most foul authors to look out for. So enjoy.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. That's really great. Welcome, Mary.
Hi.
Hi, lovely to see you. I'm going to introduce Mary. Mary Grant is a fellow Boldwood Publishing author, and we have recently met, mainly because of this, but we've always been aware of each other as Boldwood authors. Mary was born in Cardiff, and she really still has her Welsh roots, and obviously, you know, she's got that lovely little lilt to her voice that I've noticed, which is lovely. And she worked as a nursery teacher in London, and she's taught deaf children, which is really interesting because I picked up actually that in her new upcoming book, she's got a profoundly deaf character, which I find really interesting, because funnily enough, I've got somebody in my upcoming book that is actually not profoundly deaf, but she is deaf and has hearing aids. So actually, I might be coming to you for some tips here. So that's great. Now, Mary lives on the Isle of Wight, and her books are based on the island, and which sounds quite spooky actually. And she lives with her husband, and she has 2 grown children that are currently living still on the island with her because of obviously lockdown and the pandemic and so on. And I've got to ask you, Mary, what made you move to the Isle of Wight?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I didn't even know the place existed. And then my husband was offered a job here, and we came over. This was 20. My little boy was what? Just one? Just less than one. And so it was over 26 years ago. And we came over for his interview. And I remember standing on the front at Ryde, looking over, and you can see the mainland. And I said, "We're on an island. We're coming to an island." And I couldn't believe it, really. I'd not been here on holiday or anything. And we moved. And it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
It sounds beautiful. And so you moved to Boldwood Publishers, and your book that's come out recently is The House Party, which I'm in the middle of reading, and I would have been much further on, but that's a big story. And it's actually, so would you class it more of a murder mystery or a psychological thriller, or do you think it is a bit of both?
I think it's definitely more on the murder mystery, whodunit type thing. I was brought up reading Agatha Christie, and that's what seeps through, really. It's quite dark though, so it's certainly not cozy mystery.
Oh, I have noticed it's dark.
Yeah, it's dark.
I'm in the depths of the darkness of it at the moment, so it's sort of
get
back to it.
It's like a dark whodunit.
It's quite a scary one, and it is actually set on the island, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So tell me about the setting and how you actually came to decide that you were going to write on the island, because not all authors write about the area that they know or they live in. They quite often build their own world. So what made you use the island?
Yeah, well, I think it was because my first 3 books, which were indie, myself published, they're all set. The first 2 are set in Wales. And somehow I was drawn there I felt safe there writing a story, I think, somehow. But I walked a lot with my dog on the island, and as the more I walked, the more I thought, I've got to write some stories here. And there's lots of remote, small villages, and they're sort of made for sort of setting a murder mystery. And I think an island with this idea that you can be cut off, but there can be moments when you can't get off or on it because of weather or because the ferries are full. It makes that extra edge, I think, and it makes it, well, it's just I like to have murder mysteries that are set in quite small groups of people, either within a family or a small group of friends in a village. That's great. And then it's who is amongst those is who's done it, who's did the murder, you know. And I think it's it's an ideal, and also you've got all the fabulous beaches and downlands, so you've got lots of wonderful places for your characters to go and visit and look for clues and things. So yeah, it's great.
That's super. So you're actually with Boldwood, and you've got your new book coming out in June, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. Shall I introduce you now, Diane? Because it's very exciting actually, because I've just read The X, which is your new book out, and this is, although it's number 4 in a series about Jenna Morgan, what a gorgeous character. I just jumped in at number 4 because I wanted to read the latest and then go back. It's brilliant because it stands alone, and yet it's part of a series. So you've got a feeling of characters who are well lived in, but I didn't get lost for a second. And I think that's good writing actually, because I think you don't sort of have a big chunk of backstory to fill, but somehow it's filtered in beautifully. So I knew exactly what was happening. And to be honest, I started reading, I thought, look at it, and the next thing I know is that my husband's the light up and I'm still reading my Kindle because it is gripping, absolutely gripping.
Thank you.
So would you describe it as crime mystery? What would you?
I think it's a pretty dark psychological thriller.
Yes, it's dark.
So I think the whole series is almost like a hybrid of psychological thriller and police procedural, because I really do heavily weight the police procedural, but the thriller part is so important to have that sort of moment.
Yeah. So it's you live in Shropshire, don't you? With as you can see, 2 dogs behind, and hens and cats and all sorts. So you're all living there, and I just worry. Sorry, my geography is terrible. Ironbridge now, is that close to you? Your stories are they set out? All of them in Ironbridge? Am I right?
We lived in we lived just near Ironbridge, Horsehay.
Right.
These are the sort of really old parts of Telford, if you like. And Ironbridge is the birthplace of industry, and it has the Iron Bridge, and it's actually in a huge gorge. And when I originally wrote Find Her Alive, the first book, it was actually called The Gorge. My working title was called The Gorge, but I think they thought that sounded more like horror. So yes, we used to live over that way on, and we lived there for 13 years at Horsehay, and I used to walk Skye, my Dalmatian, over there probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, sometimes in the summer 4 times a week, quite easily over the Ironbridge Gorge. And it's a stunningly beautiful place, but it can be quite spooky.
So you came from romance before to be writing the procedural. Was it through walking around that area that you suddenly thought, I want to write crime here, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's quite a funny thing. I wanted to write a thriller. And I started writing it, and I ended up, I had to, I finished work and I had a foot operation, and I couldn't do anything but just sit. And I was a bit miserable because I just had this foot operation and I couldn't go anywhere and I couldn't do anything. And I was just a bit grisly, and I'd been writing this dark thriller, and I thought, this is too dark at the moment, and I want something lighter and brighter. So I actually wrote my first romance in a fortnight. Literally just
good grief.
Just poured it out. I just shelved this thriller that I had, and I just poured this romance out, and and out it came, wrote it, sat on it for a while because, you know what it's like, first book. Do you want anybody to see it even? You know, what happens if somebody tells you it's rubbish? But I didn't. I didn't keep it to myself. I actually then sent it off, and it was a cowboy romance. So, and my romances aren't light and bright. They do have, most of them have quite a dark element to them, and you know, maybe somebody's background is really horrible and they're trying to escape it and so on. But they also have a lot of humour running through them, as do my psychological, not maybe a lot, but there is that human element of
there is
humour in adverse conditions. So I started writing my first romance and sent it off, and I had 2 offers immediately for publishing, and I was like, whoa, wow, is that good? You know when you go, oh, is that good? I didn't realise how good and how lucky I really was, because it was picked up initially by Liquid Silver Publishing, which was one of the biggest online publishers for Kindle and so on in the USA. And then I had to rewrite the whole of my book in US English.
Ah, nice. Did they help you with that?
Yeah, they were brilliant. But you know, I read a lot of American. So it actually, once I'd done that the first time, and I was then writing the following book at the same time, because I was writing the following book in US English to start with, that was easier because you didn't have to rewrite it. And there's certain words that are so funny. You know, you can translate most words, but some we would sort of have a backward and forward about, because the Americans did not get what a onesie is for a baby. You know, the what do we call? I forgot what we call it. They call it a onesie for a baby grow.
Baby grows.
We couldn't come to terms on a baby grow, and they were going, well, it's a onesie, and I was going, well, onesies are things that our adults wear.
Yeah, we think adults wearing them, don't we? Yeah.
So it was quite funny. So that was a really great sort of experience. But all the while and they kept saying to me, have you got another book? Have you got another book? And the first year I wrote 4 and published 4 books.
Wow.
And then I think the following year 3, and the year after that probably 4 again. And they just kept saying, what's next? So I kept writing them. And then a couple of years ago, I said to my husband, you know what? I really need to get this thriller out.
Yeah.
Because it had been fermenting then for several years from these walks, you know, and I just felt I've got to do it now. And also I wrote it in UK English. It was based in the UK in, as we say, Ironbridge, and so I really needed to send it to the British publishers, and I sent it to only Boldwood, and they picked it up, and I got a 4-book contract from that.
Yeah,
I mean, that was fabulous.
That's just absolutely. But do you know, I think it's interesting. You saying that you wrote romance first. Actually, I think sometimes when you've done a different discipline and you come into a different one, I think it's really good, because I think one enriches the other. And I think, you know, you've got some really lovely characters. And we were talking earlier about in the X, where things there's one very complex character. And I think when you've written other sorts of literature, sometimes it can be helpful, because I think you've got used to doing that depth of character that is not always in that genre. It is very often, but sometimes it's not. And I think that's just lovely. Actually, I think it makes it very rich, doesn't it? It makes it very rich.
I think it does. I mean, I'm very much a character based storyteller. So, and I do think, you know, writing 12 romances because you do concentrate on the characters. And
Yeah.
you know, when I'm writing, when I wrote that first book, I had this horrific beginning to the book, you know, and then my character, Lydia, gets on a plane and she flies across to America, and she's expecting her pregnant sister to be greeting her.
Yeah.
But what she doesn't realise is her pregnant sister has gone into labour and off to the hospital. So she sends her brother-in-law, who is a cowboy. And this cowboy is just sat in, you know, arrivals, waiting for this lady with her twin children to arrive. And the moment I introduced him, he dictated the rest of that story. It was him, his character, all the way through, and it was just so strong. And I can, it's one of those characters I can still feel him now. And he was just so powerful. So you know, and you know, when you're writing your stories, I notice obviously we both have something very much in common, and that's that we both use animals.
Yes, yes. It's funny actually, because I think I got to know you a lot through your Facebook page, because you talk about your animals. And mine was Cocker Spaniels, really. That's how I started getting animals involved. And it started really, I got my Cocker Spaniel, Pepper. I'd actually not been very well, which is partly how I got into writing. And I'd stopped work as a teacher, and I was having a break, and I got quite insular and almost a bit scared to go out. And I was talking to my therapist, and we thought, what about the dog? And that's my first ever dog in my life was Pepper.
Wow, and you chose a Cocker Spaniel. That's a big thing to choose.
I didn't quite realise what we were taking on, I don't think. But he was fabulous. And then online, there's this gorgeous group called Cockers on Facebook with people who own Cocker Spaniels. And I got lots of friends actually out there in the real world, walking Pepper. I made friends. And then on this group, because having not had a dog before, I was going, this is meant to happen. Well, I mean, I did read lots of books. I did do my study and everything. And I had a gorgeous breeder who was quite helpful as well. But anyway, when I then started writing, this little group, or big group now, were hugely supportive. I only mentioned it. You know, I've just written a book, by the way. And suddenly they all started buying it and writing reviews and things. So I thought, right, in the next book I write, this is my first 3 indie books, I'm going to name the Cocker Spaniel after one of their dogs. And I just choose them fairly randomly with people who've been really helpful and really supportive. It's my little way of saying thank you, really. So that's how Cocker Spaniels have ended up. And it's lovely, actually. People are so thrilled. They really are. It means a lot to them, I think. And I always promise, I use the physical appearance, but I can't go quite into the personality of each dog because I don't know them that well. So please forgive me if I have them loving this and they don't quite love that. But, you know, they're basically their dog. And so that's how I end up with. And then in the one that's coming up, The Island, I've got a very special Cocker Spaniel in that because it's a hearing dog for deaf people. Because one of my characters is profoundly deaf. She's an adult, obviously, and she has a hearing dog for the deaf come into her life, and it provides this wonderful companionship. I had a friend in where I used to live in Hastings. He was profoundly deaf, and I saw the difference a hearing dog for the deaf made to him. And it can be quite a lonely disability. You can get shut off. Socially, things can be sometimes difficult when it's big crowds and groups and everything. And he was like in his late 20s, and this dog was just his companion. So I thought that'd be an interesting thing to use in the book, actually, and bring that side. The character in my book is married to a vicar, and he has this incredibly hectic, busy life. So she escapes off onto the beach and things with her dog with keep her sanity, I think. So yeah, I do have the odd cat as well, actually.
The odd cat. Do you have odd cats coming into your books?
Well, the first book I had was a little cat who was actually owned. She started off with a cat and then got a dog, which had been a bit like me. And then in the new one, I think it's just a cat. Somebody owns a cat as well. But I was always brought up with cats, so in some ways, I think cats are probably even more part of me. I know instinctively how a cat thinks a bit better than with a dog.
Yeah.
What about you? What animals do you have in your books? I noticed you had a Dalmatian.
So behind me
Yes.
Is a Dalmatian, and I don't know if you can see him.
Yeah, can.
Labrador. So Sky was the inspiration for Find Her Alive, because I used to go and walk her across the Iron Bridge Gorge.
Oh, the gorge, yes.
When you go over the Iron Bridge, you've got sort of the very commercialised side where all the Americans and the Japanese come in their coach loads. Well, used to.
Yeah.
But they only come for so many weeks in the summer. You really don't see them from October onwards. The place is deserted and it's beautiful. It's just lovely, and it's got so many gorgeous cafes and so on. And it had become my habit to go a couple of times a week, normally midweek, because it was so quiet and almost ghostly sometimes, because when the mist comes in, so you've got the river running through the gorge, and when it gets really cold, the mist comes up and it rises from the river, but it's got nowhere else to go because the gorge is sort of keeping it in. So I used to walk my dog up the commercialised bit, if you like, where all the shops are and the cafes, and then you go over the Iron Bridge, and it's an old railway track that's been pulled up, so it's quite a wide swathe to walk along, and it's quite windy, and it goes around the whole of the gorge. But then you've got these little pathways that go up. So I used to walk up the pathways, and they get literally so that just about get through, really narrow. And I used to walk up there, and it would get narrower and higher and steeper and slippery and all of that. And I'd have Sky with me, and she would pound up the hill and down the hill because she's typical Dalmatian and really full of energy.
Yeah.
Actually, not dissimilar to cockers. I know that they're really energetic dogs as well. So you know what it's like. You go charging round, and this one day I was just walking along, and she's charging around, and then she goes all quiet and snuffly, and it was October time, which I based Find Her Alive in late October, because all the leaves have come down, and it's sort of got that where everything's damp down and the sound is a little bit creepy, and over in the Iron Bridge, over the other side of the river, you're up on the hillside here, and down on the other side you can hear what I actually have named in the book as the Twilight Walkers, which is all the dog walkers gather at twilight, really. And you've got this huge amount of dogs running around, and they're a lovely crowd of people, actually. And I do know some of them, and I've taken, you just go along and let your dog off the lead.
How it happens, isn't it? Yeah.
They all charge around together. But up in this hillside, it was just me and Sky, and I could hear. It was before I had Bo, before he was born, and I could hear just the vague voices from across the river, and I thought, there's somebody watching me, and I think, oh, okay, and I stopped, and she was just snuffling around at my feet, and she kind of stilled. Which is rare for a Dalmatian. And I looked up into the hillside, and as I looked up, there was a herd of deer watching me, and they were just frozen. And I just stood absolutely amazed. And I watched this beautiful. You know, they kind of have a head doe rather than the stag. There's sort of a doe that tends to be more dominant. And we stood and looked at each other. And I don't know, you know, most people have read Alice in Wonderland, where the cat, when it disappears and just its eyes are left.
That's the Cheshire Cat, isn't it?
The Cheshire Cat. And it was kind of one of those moments where this beautiful deer just disappeared into the background because their camouflage is so good.
Yeah.
And it was quite some time later, I thought, gosh, do you know what? If that had been a man up there in camouflage above me, and I couldn't see him because of the tree line, and he was watching me.
Yeah.
And that's the start of Find Her Alive.
But it's that feeling, isn't it? That, you know,
so
getting the book.
Sky herself is, I've got a male Dalmatian because I didn't want to do what I did to this Dalmatian. I didn't want to do that to my own dog. And I won't do any spoilers, but she kind of starred in it. But also I used the name Felicity for the sister, which you will have caught her in the X just a little bit.
Yes, I did. Yes,
sister of Jenna Morgan. Now in Find Her Alive, Fliss goes missing, and Fliss is the name of my one-eyed cat here. And one of the reasons I didn't even choose the name consciously, but Fliss is a really feisty fighter of a character. Now, our one-eyed kitten was handed to me at a week old, smaller than my hand. She was tiny, and she'd been born with an infection in her eye, and they reckoned that one of the other kittens had caught her eye as she came out the womb, and it set up an infection, and her head was just horribly swollen, and then she had to have her eye removed. And we swear she lost all 9 of her lives before she was even 1 year old.
Well, it's an absolute miracle she survived, isn't it?
Absolutely. And she's a real feisty fighter, which is what the character of Fliss is in Find Her Alive. She is an absolute fighter. She's a scrapper. And she doesn't know it. She doesn't know it. And neither does her sister. They both think she's very precious. You know, we see this little cat and everybody goes, oh, what a precious little cat. And you actually go, but she's a real fighter. And this is
the one that won't make friends with the Labrador.
No, she loves the Labrador.
Right.
Sam is the one she's just too superior. Sam is 17 or 18 this year.
Oh goodness!
So she was mature when we got Beau. He's 7 this year, and so she was quite mature. And he was a puppy, and he just kept running after. And she was like, no, not having it. Whereas this, we got as this scabby little thing. She looked like an alien, and we gave her to Sky. Sky nurtured her. So animals in stories and you having names of Cocker Spaniels is just fantastic. So what about the characters? Do you ever find yourself almost like I have, almost using a character of one of your animals for people?
I don't think I have actually. No, I don't think I can't. Not consciously.
Not consciously.
No, not consciously. But I do find that the animals in my stories, in many ways, they always have the same role that Pepper always had for me. They're the companion, and because I got Pepper when I was quite vulnerable, and it was all about company and somebody who made me brave enough to go out there, and that's how the Cocker Spaniel tends to be. And I find as a writer actually, they often talk to their dog. and it's a way of maybe working through things, and this sort of unconditional love, this sort of somebody to cuddle at the end of a difficult day. I think they add something. I can't imagine not having animals in a story.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they're very important to a lot of people, actually.
I think so. And I don't know about you, but actually, from a writer's point of view, there are places I go with my two big dogs that I wouldn't go on my own. I mean, for a start, people would look at you funny if you've not got a dog.
Yeah.
You're going certain places. You know, I'm walking along with my two dogs. If I see somebody on their own, I think, what are they doing here? And it's not that I don't expect them to go out walking on their own. It's certain places you don't expect to see non-dog owners, if you get what I mean. So sometimes
I can remember Pepper used to sort of look at me. He'd look over if somebody was on there, and then he'd look back at me and say, "They haven't got a dog." What? So yeah, I think I discovered a lot of townland and things because I had Pepper. And found lots of nice, lovely places because of him, actually.
And atmospheric places. So going over the Ironbridge Gorge, you know, all the way up into those hills, I wouldn't have done that on my own. And that actually gave me that feel for the book.
Yeah.
So that underlying hauntingness.
Yeah.
That you gain when you go out for these walks with your dogs.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's lovely.
So
something I was going to ask you about, actually, I forgot right at the beginning, about if you write police procedural, and I was thinking that the one thing that scares me is like I tend to do a whodunit, and although the police are involved, they're sort of right at the edge. Yes. And part of it is that is knowing the actual information you need to know to get it all. I think readers are very very sophisticated. They've watched a lot of stuff on well, I do. I watch masses, you know, I'm trying to think of them all now, but you know, all the ones on telly anyway, and Unforgotten. And so people know quite a lot of what should be correct. So how do you find doing? I mean, I noticed your husband was an ex-policeman. Is that helpful? Does he help you with information?
Yes, he does. I pin him down and say, "Give me that information." So basically, I met my husband when I was 16. Huh? And I was 2 weeks off my 17th birthday, and I met him, and obviously, you know, the rest is history. But my entire family, everybody seems to have been in uniform in my family.
Really?
So my brother was in the RAF, and my brother was in the RAF, and then you know, I met my husband. I met my husband because my sister was a police officer. So my middle sister. There's 4 of us children. So my brother was in the RAF, and my middle sister Lynn was a police officer for 16 years, and then you know, our entire family. So then my older sister Margaret married a police officer. And my middle sister married a police officer, and so it was all police officers all round. And although I mean they've always been very good, because they don't particularly, when they come home from work, they didn't particularly want to talk work. You know, they'd like to leave business behind.
Yeah.
But sometimes you would, and you certainly get, you know, that there are times when you get the feeling.
Yeah.
What's gone on, but I've never really questioned my hubby. You know, I've never really gone, you know, tell me what's happened at work today, because actually I didn't really want to know in some ways, and I think, you know, they do want to come home and not think some
different, doesn't it?
Things, but I think just being just having that has just been soaked into me, if you like,
Definitely.
over, I mean, my husband's career was 33 years and he retired as a superintendent. But he'd spent a lot of his time, and funnily enough, quite a lot of his time as a beat bobby in Ironbridge. So when I did write about it, although it wasn't conscious, there was a certain element. And then my characters, because I've met police officers and I've met, you know, I think I'm quite honest in my portrayal of police officers. For a start, you don't have a superintendent solving a crime. It's normally a PC. It's normally a sergeant. You know, it will be they're the ones out there doing it. And by the time you get to superintendent, and I'm not being derogatory, but there's an awful lot of paperwork, and they're controlling everything.
Yeah,
you know,
you've got to have somebody up there.
My hubby was a silver commander, so that if there was a firearms incident, he would be there. But he didn't pull a trigger, you know.
No.
So it's different at different levels. So that's one of the things I find when I'm watching TV, and you go, oh, it's an inspector, and they've solved the crime. No, it would probably be the PC or the sergeant. Which is why I've tried to make the DS Jenna Morgan series very realistic. She's a sergeant. She's got her little group of PCs, but she goes and she has this lovely inspector who they've got a great relationship, you know. So again, it's because when you're working in those kind of atmospheres, you've got to have the relationships that go on, you know. So sometimes the inspector, and I don't care whether it's a male or female, you know, it doesn't matter. But sometimes the inspector might be like a parent almost, you know, they're guiding them, and they do have care, and they do, and I've seen it and I felt it, and my hubby was very, very badly assaulted when we'd not been married very long. And it is that family of police that come round, you know, and they were there for me. You know, are you handling things right? And it wasn't because they weren't doing it under official sort of guidelines. It was coming around because it's a family, and the police are, you know, they are a family. And I experienced that. And you're drawn in as one of the wives, if you like. You're drawn into that family, and you feel and hear and see things. And I think that's what I like to portray. But you don't use, as you say, yours isn't. Yours is a small niche group of people. Agatha Christie.
I think I did try to get. I mean, I actually sent an email to the local police station and asked them, could you tell me if this happened on the Isle of Wight, what level of sort of police officer would attend? And they were really lovely. They helped me because I did actually want to try and get it right, but I hope I got it right. So I did try to get that bit of it right, but no, you know, whereas compared to a lot of procedural that I've seen, it's you know, I don't touch like DNA and all that sort of thing really. I just say the forensic team turned up type thing.
Whereas actually,
the thing with a whodunit is actually one of the problems is you have to have a murder in a whodunit, but it's got to look. You've got to get this line between so that you'll have an amateur look into it. So it's got to be vague enough for the police not to be fully involved.
Yes.
But it's got to be enough of it for her to know it's a murder. And I haven't written the two now. That's quite a fine line, really, because you know the police have are very good at their job, and they're not going to miss obvious stuff and obvious clues. So she has to know something without and not be being sort of keeping stuff from the police that they shouldn't know as well.
Yeah.
So it's all that, which makes it quite interesting. But once you get there, and like the one I've got coming up is a hit and run. So there you see there's plenty of route. You know, hit and runs unfortunately happen where they don't catch the person. So that's, I hope it's credible. And with the house party, it's somebody falling off a cliff, which looks like an accident, and there's plenty of reasons for the accident, so that you can be excused for the police accepting that that's an accident, if you know what I mean.
And with and I noticed when I started reading the house party that it's got that sort of that atmosphere of Rebecca.
Yes. Oh, that's the most wonderful thing you could say. It's one of my favourite books. I do feel that Rebecca's probably the first psychological drama that's never quite been given that title. I listened to it on audio actually recently again, having read it, and on audio, it was Jenny Agutter reading it, and
I love her.
She reads it so beautifully, and really, really. Actually, I saw the new version, the new film on as well on telly, and I was reading it because I loved it in the old black and I loved the old black and white, and then I thought I'll watch a bit of it, and if I don't like it, I'll stop because it's too precious to me as a story.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's very, very good.
Worth watching. Yeah. See, because obviously I've said to you, so I'm having my house pulled apart, and it's gone slightly all right. And I started reading your book with every intention of going, I've read your book. And I'm halfway through it, but there's this atmosphere that, definitely has that feeling of Rebecca. It's that darkness of almost, she's insular because she knows something and she's worried. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but she can't tell anybody. Because it's her.
Yeah.
It's something that she just doesn't really know. But I don't want to tell. I'm really edging around here because I'm not sure how much I can tell. But the secret is hers, really. And it's a worry, isn't it? And so it is that darkness, because there's a darkness because she knows somebody. She knows somebody did it.
Well, I think the whole notion of and it happens in Rebecca, where she starts off very naive and very trusting, then finding out she's been lied to. Yes. And I think that's at the bottom of a lot of murder mystery type things.
And it's the build of it.
Who can you trust, really? And I think there's something very scary about thinking your closest friends and then finding, because they, slowly she finds they've all been keeping secrets from one person. And the next book, The Island, it's family. And she finds she's got sisters who are keeping secrets, and I think, I don't mean it to be unkind, because I like people and I think lots of people are lovely, but I think everybody has secrets, and I think that's an interest, and actually it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. No. There's a saying somewhere about being kind to everybody because you don't know what people are going through. And some of the secrets people find out about things are actually not that they've done something terrible, but actually something really difficult has happened to them.
Yes.
And I think taking what you see on the surface is not a bad lesson to learn in life. And it can be, and it's not necessarily that people have done something terrible. It can just be something terrible has happened to them, or something very difficult. And that's, it's just sort of trying to see inside and maybe allow people to be a bit more complicated than they might appear.
I certainly think human characters obviously are hugely complicated.
Well, I think like in the X, the I don't really call it the villain, but the person who does the crime, she is so complicated, and it's what I was saying is it would be really easy for you to have drawn a character there that would be totally unlikable, because of what she does. But you, without giving too much away, actually make it much more complicated, and you end up, well, I certainly ended up with a much more ambiguous feel towards her, and I hope a bit of an understanding of why somebody might do something.
So when you're actually writing your books, you're and I'm only concentrating at the moment on your two newest, so your the House Party, which has not been on the market that long, and then your upcoming one, which sounds very exciting as well. When you're doing this, obviously, because you've got layers, haven't you, that you kind of have to layer in to your. So, what about your research on?
I actually do. Partly, I was always used to doing quite a lot of research. I think even if you touch fairly lightly on something quite a difficult subject, I think it deserves to be researched properly. So in the House Party, I have one of the characters has an addiction to over-the-counter painkillers.
Yeah.
Which is actually in the line of duty at the moment. They've taken the same storyline.
Oh, don't you? Oh, you know what?
Don't worry, you'll know it from the start in the new one. But
mine's the same though. I'm writing a storyline that's just appeared on television, and I can't say what it is. And I just went, no! Nobody else has thought of this. Nobody would have thought. And
I was very surprised. I thought, well, I'm glad my book came out first. Actually, it's one of them. It's not even the main character. But I ended up doing a lot of research.
Mary, move to the other side.
Oh, thank you. I think it's something that really, really needs talking about and looking at. So I think it was, and that's part of what writing's about, isn't it? Is looking at things that are affecting everybody.
Yeah.
And so I did quite a lot of research for that. I researched the places where I set the novels as well, and I learned loads about them actually.
What the actual places?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I noticed from your web page, you've got quite a bit about about the island, haven't you? You've got off on your web page, which is really
what I do is I tend to take a village, like in the House Party, it's based on the geography of where I live, which is Carisbrooke. And then I give it a different name, which is Castleford, because I don't want people to think I've used the people. I haven't used the people, but I use the geography of Carisbrooke and Freshwater. And then I quite often use the real names of places they may go to visit, like Tennyson Down or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but it is actually lovely to be given the geography. You know, that's one less thing to have to work out for your novel in some ways.
I've actually used all the real names for the police station and the area.
Oh, I wondered about that in the X if it was a real police station.
It is a real police station.
Yes.
And I have been in there so many times. And one of the things I got, and this is lovely, this is a lovely feeling when you've done so much research and you really try to get it right. You don't always, somebody's bound to say at some point, but we don't deal with the negative.
We try.
Positive. And before lockdown last year, I was doing a signing in Waterstones up at no, I beg your pardon, W.H. Smith that day. W.H. Smith up at Telford Town Centre. And this gentleman came in with his wife, and I got to know his wife, and he was a retired police officer. And I don't know him at all. And he came over and he took my hand in his, and he said, I've got to tell you, he said, I loved Find Her Alive. And he'd come to buy the second book, so he was there, and he said, I loved it. He said, do you know, he said, I could smell the hallways of Mallinsgate Police Station as she put me down. And that was just and that is a massive, it's wonderful to know. And when I do research, I mean, I research forensics, goodness only knows what people must think of my research if they looked at my history on it. But I've actually done a couple of university online courses.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Durham University and Edinburgh University, and they do forensics courses, Mary.
Interesting.
You might want to know that.
I might want to know that, yes. Yeah.
And it's free of charge, and it's 6 weeks
Oh.
you can do.
Oh,
and then
right.
what they do is they have a crime.
Yeah.
They commit the crime at the beginning, and then they
Yeah.
lead you through all of the forensics.
Oh,
And
interesting.
well, it is. It's really good because yes, hubby, he's absolutely fantastic. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll give him a dig in the ribs, and I'll say to him, if you turned up on somebody's doorstep and you were going to arrest them for such and such, how would you do it?
Yes.
I mean, through every single step. I don't want to have imagination. I don't want anything flowery or fancy, and he doesn't do flowery and fancy. He does details. So I say, what would you say? And he says, well, you wouldn't just, they open the door and you go, I'm arresting you because of. He said, you don't do that. That's not the way police officers deal with things, because they're dealing with humans all the time. And I think quite often this element is missed out on in a lot of TV stuff, where it looks almost like they're bullish. Even when the TV programs like Line of Duty are really on the side of the police officers, sometimes it comes across as they're just straight to the point, and they're not. They're not always straight to the point. So it is about getting that fine line, so that we see actually how things are actually done, and with the DNA and the research with that, and the research you do. And I think with the research that obviously, and you probably take it a little bit lightly, but you will have done research for so many years because of the profoundly deaf and the deaf teaching that you've done. And what you don't want to do is insult anybody when you're when you're dealing with this. And I'm sure that your character, because I really want to read that now, because I've got a deaf character, as I said, in it. Isn't that
I haven't asked you much about what your next book is at all, actually. Sorry, we've been looking back on the X. But you're actually working on a new one?
I am. I'm currently writing a standalone. So I had a chat with Boldwood. I had a chat with Boldwood, and we had a lovely session where we threw everything in and decided that I'd do a standalone, because when you get to book 4 in a series, sometimes people either want a break from your series, or they haven't met you yet. So if you do a standalone, it gives them a chance to go, oh, I like this, we'll go to the beginning. But some people don't like to just jump in on book 5.
That's very true,
So standalone for me next.
So no Jenna Morgan next time. It'll be the same sort of book though.
She won't be. We'll be revisiting Jenna Morgan a little later.
Your standalone, is that crime procedural?
No,
procedural.
It is deep, dark psychological thriller.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
But not. It's probably, I think it's a lot darker psychologically than the series. And I think it's, I'm really, really excited about it, actually. It's good.
Do you know when it'll be out or anything?
I don't, because I'm currently writing it at the moment, so we haven't actually got a timeline. But actually, I'm supposed to be finished it by next week.
I'm sure it will be. Hello, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. Lovely to see you back. Sorry,
Hiya.
We just carried on chatting.
Hiya. No, that's brilliant. Exactly what I wanted. I've just got some questions. So, this one's from Wendy, who's also a fellow crime author. She said, "Why does the Isle of Wight make such a great place to set a mystery?"
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Wendy. I think the idea of an island, I think there's boundaries, and I think it can make for something sort of more claustrophobic, and I think it's got its own identity, and I think you have close-knit communities. You've got this whole idea of this water that is this boundary between the island and the mainland. And you've got small villages, and also the very beautiful beaches and things as well, and the downland. But it's I think it's the atmosphere. There's this feeling that everybody knows everybody, but do they really? And you can think you're going over to the other side of the island, and then you keep bumping into people, and this feeling of everybody's watching everybody. And it's great for the sort of mystery that I write, which is like a whodunit within a small group of people. So yeah, it's great place for a murder mystery. Thank you.
Definitely. And she's got another question, and she just wants to ask, where do you start, for both of you, where do you start, character or plot? She was asked that question, and she thought it was quite an interesting one.
Diane, where would you start?
For me, character. So when I was writing The X, before I started writing, I'm not a plotter. I'm a total pantster. So I actually started off with a feeling, and it was actually an experience that I had. I'd worked somewhere for a short while, and there was an incident at work, and I got this feeling of intense fury from a member of staff, so overpowering that they actually maintained this fury for 3 days before they actually exploded, to the extent that I actually thought they were going to hit me, and it was really, really intense feeling. And that was years ago. And when sort of the X started to ferment in my mind, it started with this feeling. And you've read the book, Mary, so at the beginning it is this lady goes to a party, it's a Christmas party, and she overhears something she doesn't want to hear, and she's furious. I started with that fury, that absolute feeling of bursting anger, and it's like, my thoughts on it was, you've got that thread of control, and what happens when that thread snaps? And so it's all characters, because it's certainly the character, the personality of that woman in the X is so intensely strong that she kind of drives the whole story. What about you, Mary?
I think to be honest, it's often setting as I'm walking around the island. I think, because the house party, I was walking over on Freshwater and up on the cliffs, and you hear the stories of people who go out for a walk with somebody on a cliff, and only one person comes back, and then that gradually grew. So it was sort of more like setting, then the idea of the plot. And I'm a great plotter. I do a lot of free pantsing, because I end up with so many different layers. I get very confused otherwise. So I tend to do lots of plotting, then I write, then I replot, and I write. I think I might I don't know. So there obviously character masses massively, because I think as a reader, what you invest in is character, and what you care about is character. And I think, so once I get the idea, then I think, right, who am I going to put into this? Who is going to be part of this? Bless them. And that's where I go next.
Yes, who am I going to kill?
Yes.
Have we got any more questions?
Still, we haven't. I'm just checking. I'm just so interested in what you're saying. I'm just, forgetting what. No, we haven't got any questions. I don't know.
I've got some great quick fire questions. that Mary actually put together for us.
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, this is good fun. Yeah.
We're both going to answer these, and it's just quick fire, no explanation.
Yeah.
Just go for it. So,
Okay then.
Mary, which book has made you, or which writer, it can be an author or a book, which one has made you laugh out loud?
Got two. I put Bill Bryson and Emma Murray, the juggler I just read, which is hysterical. Wonderful.
Oh, really?
What about you?
Okay.
Yeah,
I've not
great.
read that one. Okay, I'm going to do that. Got to
Yeah.
put that on TBR. Okay. Mine is Susan Elizabeth Phillips,
Oh, I don't know her.
American author.
Right.
She's a hoot. She's an
What was the
absolute
name?
Susan Elizabeth Phillips.
Susan Elizabeth Phillips. What a wonderful name. Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Right.
Very funny. So what book or which author can make you cry your heart out?
Yes, there's a book it's actually a particular book called Invisible by Barbara Copperthwaite, which is actually, it's an amazing
I know
book.
Barbara.
So it's so moving, that book,
Yes.
because it's actually the wife of the criminal and how she copes with having her husband done horrendous things. And it's interesting because it's the other side of the coin, and it made me cry. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's lovely. Barbara's actually a member of, now is she? So we sometimes have the RNA and the Crime Writers Association, so Romance Novelists Association and Crime Writers, and I'm a hybrid, I'm a member of both.
Yeah.
But Barbara's a member of the Crime Writers Association as well. So yeah,
I love all the books actually. Her latest is wonderful. Absolutely.
Yeah. Nora Roberts can make me cry.
Nora Roberts. I don't know.
Really? Okay. Most successful author.
Right.
Look her up.
I know the name and I've seen it, but I've not read any of her books. So
she's phenomenal. She writes romance, but she writes under the name of J.D. Robb.
Right.
And she writes only slightly futuristic, but psychological thrillers. Brilliant, both. But she can make me cry. And she writes animals into her books, and that's normally what makes me cry. Which book would you like to read again and again and again?
Now this is a bit pathetic, really. Agatha Christie's. If ever I get to a sort of spell where I'm absolutely shattered, I reread an Agatha Christie, because there are certain ones actually that I just love the places. And I reread Then There Were None the other day, and I was actually amazed at how dark it was. I really had forgotten. It was very creepy.
They are very dark, her stories, aren't they? I mean, her life was really.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, very strange. I actually, I don't know whether you'll know this one either. This is Kathleen Woodiwiss, and she was one of those. She was the first. I think she was the first romance writer to put sex in her books. So she's no longer with us, but she wrote this story called Shana, and I had got it out actually. I've got a copy. My sister bought the copy, and it was when we were just starting to get those really thick. I mean, it's about that thick.
Yeah.
The most beautifully written story, but I could just read it again and again.
That's lovely.
Yes, it's dated, but not in such a way that you go, oh, yeah, no, it's beautiful. What book would make you think? Actually, give you reason to think harder.
Think harder.
Or question life. What makes you think more?
I haven't got that one ready, actually.
My question.
You say yours. What was yours?
Actually, this is something I studied at O level, I'm going to say. I think it was O level. And it was 1984 by George Orwell.
Orwell, yeah.
And don't you just sometimes, I don't know whether you've read it.
Yes, I have, yeah.
But even now you go, because they had Big Brother, you know, and it was
That's
now,
a, yeah.
all the years on, you think, my goodness, he wrote that as a futuristic book.
Yeah.
And my goodness, he had hit the nail on the head.
I think he was way ahead of 1984, to be honest.
Yes.
Because some of the stuff's only just starting to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
He's bang on. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing one. What about?
I think I'll just write on the back of that one because that's a good one.
Yeah, you're going to join me there.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
What book would you like to be made into a film?
I don't know whether you've heard of her, Sarah Dunnant. She writes historical fiction.
Yeah.
And she's read The Birth of Venus, which is set in Florence.
Oh, okay.
And I would love to see that made into a film. Because, I mean, I heard her speak at a literary festival and she's soaked in Florence and its history. And it's the most... I went there on holiday and I read the book while I was on holiday. And I would just love to see that. It's set in medieval times. Just
how beautiful.
Film.
Florence is wonderful, isn't it? Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I've been there. It's one of my favourite holiday destinations. I am going to say that there aren't any books I want to see made into a film because they never do them justice. If I see a film and then I see that it was from a book, I normally look at it and go, I'd rather not read the book now.
I have got books that I definitely wouldn't watch if they were made into a film.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
What really shocked you? What book has really shocked you?
Well, it was yours. The X. When I sat to do this, I thought, what was the last book that shocked me? And I thought, The X. The opening scenes in that. Yeah, amazing. So that was that.
Thank you very much.
Not in a very good way, in an absolute wow. I've got to find out what's happened here.
I think also I had a review which actually made me smile because it said that when they got to the end of The X, it was only then that everything sort of went, and they wanted to reread it.
Yes.
Knowing what they knew at the end by the time they got to the end. So
definitely,
a huge compliment. That was lovely. I thought one of the most shocking books I've ever read was Carrie.
Oh, yes.
And that was because when I read it, I was about 11 or 12.
Oh, you were young. I was very young to read that.
I think my mum thought it was about a schoolgirl.
Oops, amazing.
I don't think she checked.
No, she hadn't
read it. And do you know, all these years later, I can still have flashbacks of Carrie because I thought it was one of the most shocking, and probably because I read it at that really pivotal age. And I actually have I can remember it quite vividly, not every bit of it, but although if I started reading it, I'd probably go, yeah, I've read this, I remember it. But you know when the pig's blood poured on her from a bucket over the door, just to me, and I know that it's been made into a film, but again, it was the book that shocked me.
Yeah.
And the last question, and then we'll.
Is this all right, Lindsay? Because I've noticed we've gone over time.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh, good, lovely, right.
Last question, and then we'll and then we're going to wrap it up a little bit by telling everybody about our latest and giving a little bit of a boost. So, what book scared you the most?
I was saying, I've just discovered Lisa Jewell, which I'm very late to the party on this one. Wow. And I read Watching You, and that really freaked me out. Oh, so scary.
Yes.
Very good, though.
Yes.
Very,
very brilliant. She's a brilliant writer. Mine, I have to say, scared me really a lot is Karen Slaughter. Have you read Karen Slaughter?
Yes, yeah, I love hers. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
She's quite a graphic writer.
Yeah.
So you
Excellent.
end up, you
Yeah, I
download
love her.
to the person that she's
Yeah, I
very,
love.
brilliant
Yeah, I love it.
writer.
Love it.
So Mary, where can we get your books and in what format are they?
Yeah, well, with Boldwood, we're very fortunate, aren't we? Because they publish it, apart from them being absolutely wonderful publishers to work for, which is really, really true. They are gorgeous. They publish, when you produce a book with them, they publish it in all formats. So it's in Kindle, for every ebook, Kindle and everything. It's it's on Amazon. It's paperback, audio. It's on Spotify. And so it's an all, it'll be in the libraries, probably the most common place to get it. It's also obviously in Waterstones and independent bookshops as well. So it's all over the place.
Also, I did notice with the X, Boldwood have just started producing them in hardback as well.
Yeah,
so
great.
the X is the first of my books to be produced in hardback.
Yep.
So
Wonderful.
exciting.
So yes, they're very readily available.
Yeah, and like with me, are your books available? Do you do signed copies?
Yes. Usually, for the island, I've got the local workshop that sells them, and
I've noticed.
Yeah, I don't do it on the scale you've done it, Diane. I have to say, Diane has sent out many books.
Well, what happened was somebody asked me about my books, about signed copies, and I said yes, I do signed copies. And she said, well, my son would like to buy them for me for Mother's Day. So I said, well, absolutely fantastic. Well, I'll wrap them for you then. And I just sort of put it online that I'd done these wrapped books. A bookmark and and a couple of bits and pieces, and then suddenly people were saying, "Oh, would you like?" And I suddenly realised actually people who love their signed paperbacks can't get them at the moment because we're not doing Waterstones signings, and I normally do Waterstones WH Smith signings each time the books come out. So I just offered them online, and instead of people wanting just one book, they've been saying, particularly for Mother's Day, I thought I need a PA, and I was literally boxing up and signing all these books, and everybody wanted the full set of 4. So I was signing all the books and then wrapping them for Mother's Day, and then putting in things like a tote bag, and I've got notebooks and bookmarks, and I put chocolates in, and just to make it, because we've got to make this happy at the moment, because it's bad enough not being able to get out to the shops, and I suddenly realised that actually people who like signed paperbacks still want them. So it was so popular that literally on Friday I was back down to the post office again, and this time they've got little bookmarks and Easter eggs, little gold wrapped Easter eggs or whatever, and again these tote bags that I bought for one of my romance books, but it just says Diane Saxon on it.
I think that's just lovely.
It's great. So and as you said, it's on Spotify, we're on Audible, we're everywhere. So and your web page is
marygrand.net, I think it is. So
and mine's dianesaxon.com. So come along and visit us. And we both have newsletters. So if you sign up to our newsletter, that's actually controlled by the publishers who send out and let everybody know what events are happening before the public know, really. So if we're having a new release, things like that, they'll let you know beforehand. And I think, and my link to that is on my web page.
Yeah.
So you can sign up for the newsletter, and find out all these exciting things that are about to happen to us. And Lindsay, we've got to finally actually say thank you very much to you for organising this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you. So the next event is going to be from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and it is with Leslie Kelly, who's replacing Peter Ritchie, who unfortunately now can't make it due to health in the family, and Alan Martin. So that's going to be really interesting because they're from two different worlds. Alan writes police procedurals in their small island ones, and obviously Leslie writes the Health of Strangers trilogy. Well, not trilogy, there's more than 3 books now set in Edinburgh, and it's set about a pandemic as well. So I'm actually really looking forward to it, because Leslie was part of a big panel last year on time in Edinburgh, and obviously we didn't get enough time to really get into it, and I'd love just to be able to grill Leslie about, you know, how she's feeling about now everything that's happened in the last 2 years, and how her books have been, you know, how like the reflection on how her books and things like that. So that's going to be really interesting. So you can catch that one, and then we've got the very last one from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and that's the Glasgow Domain City, and that's Carol Ramsey, Mark Newman, who's right now writes under MJ Newman, and Jackie McLean. That's going to be another fun one, because when you put Carol Ramsey and Jackie McLean together, not sparks will fly, but it'll be a funny one. So thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you very much, Lindsay.
Thank you.